Nosing vlog day 3. It's becoming increasingly apparent what exactly I've done. So one method of accomplishing what this does is like a 10-day Vipassana retreat or something like that, to where you go into total silence, and if you're quiet and quiet and quiet, eventually sometimes you can learn how to detach or let go of all the noise and drop into silence, right? Which is somewhat of it's a fundamentally different activity of dropping into silence than it is quieting the surface of the water, the surface of consciousness, right? But sometimes doing a little bit of each, right? Like if you imagine deep sea diving, like let's say that you wanted to go on a deep sea dive, like that's going to be very difficult doing it in a hurricane. Even though you might be going like hundreds of meters below the surface, it's very uncomfortable to do it when the surface is acting up or crazy. So in some sense, like quieting the mind, controlling the mind, getting emotional calm, peace, equanimity, that makes the surface feel like safe, lack of anxiety, comfortable, and at which point the curiosity to really dive into or notice the silence beneath the noise becomes possible. So that's kind of what's going on when people are wanting to do meditation. Noticing the silence or the expansiveness of the space of being underneath all the sense phenomenon, I think, is a very it's a very valuable thing, and so that's why people set up retreats, and they set up spaces that allow their mind to become calm enough that they feel comfortable going into the silence of being. It's a religious experience. It's a renewing experience. It's kind of a baptism or a washing oneself in silence that people intuitively, instinctively, reflexively find and create for themselves at monasteries, ashrams, things like that, retreat centers. Or, so that is like this big, quiety thing. And you have to, like, there's addictions, there's noises on the surface that you think are like awesome. And so there's like an addictive quality or an addictive nature to the surface. The other way that people go into the silence or the depth of silence is with like a psychedelic or a plant medicine, they call them, ayahuasca. This rips you out of this world and pulls you down into the silence of being. Where you can see the attachments tend to want to float away. The silence in the breath tends to want to float away, float up to the surface, be reintegrated, stuff like that. But like both of those things are relatively extreme. Like if you're doing plant medicines, if you don't have the right container, it can tend to destabilize your entire life. You don't have control. You can't go back there on your own. So it creates a boundary or a layer where you have a hard time dropping in and out of silence potentially. And it's like disruptive, but it's not any more disruptive than say like, oh, I need to find a 10-day Vipassana retreat and get through the insanity that starts to bubble up at day 3, day 7, day 10 or whatever, or anything longer than that. So most of it, and what you're looking for in these phase shifts into silence is just a phase shift. It's the difference, like you're already in it, so it's the difference between just being above water or below water, just noticing where you are versus, interpreting the code on the surface. So with the nose breathing and the snorkel, it allows you to submerge yourself into the substance of your being, right? Water is the substance of your being. So immersing yourself in water, into the substance of your being, like that's what you're doing symbolically, transcendently. It like centers the self into the quiet of another realm. Like if you're in a tub with nothing turned on, the water is totally silent. Noise comes through that silence to you, so you can hear the birds around you, or you can hear your own movement or things outside of the tub, but it's coming through the silence. But otherwise, that silence is kind of muffling. But there could be a cacophony, and you realize that the water is silent, and that the vibration and the sounds is transmitting through the water, through the silence. And that's true for all sense phenomena, all perception, is that it's coming to you through a medium within which you're floating. And that medium that all sensory information is coming to you from is consciousness. And if you can ignore the consciousness, and it's very much like ignoring your relationship with water. Like if people call it low consciousness, and that's just when you've stepped up, when you're holding yourself up, when you're trying, when you're active, when you're whatever. It's very much altering and manipulating the shape of your consciousness, and that's like a wave coming up out of the ocean, and that makes you feel. That's a very strong looking out consciousness, but it's the same as having water up to your waist, to where it's like, yeah, it's floating you can feel that you drink it, it goes into your blood, but for the most part, it's just something that like drags through you and gives you awareness. If you drop into that, sinking down, relaxing into it, the basic stuff that's taught in like Qigong and exercise stuff, just relaxation, you can relax into that being, that presence, and that's the same as your metabolism centering itself in the water of the body within which it's dissolved, right? Like if the metabolism is fully in the center of the water, it's floated, whereas if it comes to the surface or like out of it, that's similar to how your weight could be totally supported in water that's up to here. But if you shift your center of gravity so that you're out of the water, suddenly this gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So if you go to an area to where the water, or you shift yourself more and more out of your metabolism, then things get heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And that shifting out of metabolism is the same as shifting into noise. And so, yeah, you can do what normally takes like, 10 days to a month or more to access, to obtain, to find that shift into silence, where with the nose breathing, just the mechanics and the structure of it allows you to do something in 2 or 3 minutes, what is normally like a multi-day journey. Like it's as powerful of an amplification device as the airplane, to where like the airplane takes you somewhere that would have taken you months and months and months to travel on foot. And the using water in this way takes you into silence in a way that is normally months and months and months and months and months of journeying, lifetimes. Because it's such an elusive thing, but it makes it less elusive. And yeah.